Many thanks to the Chalice Choir here this morning. Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. We're a church of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your identities are welcome here. Special welcome to visitors and newcomers. We're glad you're here. Families are always welcome in the sanctuary. There's also nursery care available and activities for children following the time for all ages. You can join us between services each week downstairs in the Commons for refreshments and conversation and finding ways to get involved and connected in the church. We're grateful to our musicians, including the Chalice Choir today. And unfortunately, Rose Mish is ill and can't join us today, but we'll welcome her soon in the coming weeks. And so there are a few changes in your order of service, so you'll just have to adapt as we go. Each week, our offering goes out the doors of our church to support values in the community. For April, our collection goes to the Land Stewardship Project, working at the intersections of economic and environmental justice. You can give us a plates pass or anytime online. Wednesday evening, join us for supper, followed by choir, youth group, children's activities, and a forum. This week's forum is about our practices of Unitarian Universalist pilgrimages, locally and in New England, including some reflections from those who have been on pilgrimage recently. So you can come for the supper at 5:30, the forum at 6:15. All are welcome this Wednesday. And thanks to all who volunteered and supported the Clara Barton rummage sale yesterday. Together, you raised over $1,500 for various causes, and including $300 for the youth group in their bake sale as well. So leftover items were then donated to Hawthorne Helps, Family Promise, the library, Nana's Toybrary, Paws and Claws, Community Health Services, Goodwill. So thanks to all who volunteered, thanks to all who supported that. Well done on that. So I invite you to take a breath as we enter our time of worship together with these words from our minister in the 1870s, the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes. May our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together. You're going to want both hymnals, which it looks like you probably have already. So the music will call us back in just a moment, but I invite you now to rise in body or spirit, greet those around you, and greet those online.
Morning. 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 I'm rising in spirit. I'm rising in spirit. Morning, Joe. Morning, Luke. I'm rising in spirit. Okay, no. I'm rising in spirit.
So the hymn is number 1074 in your teal hymnal. And we're getting back into hymnals these days at church instead of the screen. And this we're going old school. Musicians love it. This one has a lot of words and a lot of parts. So we're going to go through it page by page first, and then we're going to sing it together. Some of you know it. It's a fairly familiar tune, but we'll go through each part. What's that first note? Da-da. So this first part you kind of know. We come from the fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. That goes through three parts. And then the chorus is, whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. And you sing that a couple times. And then the next page, oh yes, there are 6 pages to this hymn. The next page, it repeats a couple times. It goes like this. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? And then there's a little fancy part underneath that if you know how to read music or are familiar with it, you sing that. Otherwise, stay on the top line. It'll be fine. So we sing that a couple times, go to the chorus, and then at the very end, again, it's that same as the beginning. Water make the river, river wash the mountain, fire make the sunlight turn the world around. And you sing those 3 verses and then back to the chorus at the end. Right? That's a lot of instruction, but this will be much more successful than if we had just started it. Let's go. So I invite those who are joining as new members to come up this morning. When we welcome new members, it's seemingly a simple act of putting pen to paper, signing a name, and saying welcome. And yet, and still something more powerful than that happens. It's commitment of hearts to hearts, of joining into a community, reconsecrating our commitment to our values of who we are. naming and honoring new souls among us in the larger family of all souls. We're so glad you're here this morning, and we hope that this church is a home for your soul. Know that these and others who had joined on Wednesday night, and those who aren't here in person this morning but in spirit, that this is a larger family for us all. And in strength and resilience, we make here a home for all souls.
It's a great joy for me to engage with new people who are interested in learning about First UU. I get the pleasure of hearing stories of their spiritual journeys and sometimes concerns about a religious home. It is something to be celebrated when they decide that this is their place and you are their people. This is an exciting time of people finding this progressive liberal religion, and we welcome you wholeheartedly into our congregation and into the wider world of Unitarian Universalism. We welcome this morning Shirley Deepsong and Sean Moundez.
So I invite you into the litany of welcome which is found in your order of service. First, the congregation. We welcome you into this congregation and into the larger circle of Unitarian Universalism. We welcome your story, your identity, and the gifts that you bring. May you find here a home for your soul and new members.
We gladly join with you as members of this church. We will offer our gifts as we are able to the flourishing and well-being of this community and support the values of this congregation: hospitality, compassion, spiritual growth, and justice.
And all together, we covenant to travel together in this religious
community. Here may we be affirmed for who we are and challenged to be our best selves. Here may we grow our souls, care for each other and the earth, nurture spiritual growth, practice justice, and together lead lives of meaning, service, and love.
As the congregation sings a blessing to you, which is hymn number 1 in your gray hymnal, I'll invite you to sign this membership book that holds the names of over 150 years of those who have come before you. Notice the lines before your name and after for those who are yet to come. We'll sing verses number 1 and 4 of Prayer for This House. Bid you welcome.
If there are children who are not in the children's choir who would like to join us up front, should I sit on the floor? Yes. Okay, I guess so. All right. That's okay, because that means you have to answer all the questions. Do we have any other kids coming on up? And just so you know, family, my family of choir singers up here, you are mic'd so people can hear you. Just details. I am so glad to have so many of you here today. Does anybody know what yesterday was? What? Earth Day. And rummage sale. And it was Saturday, yes, all of these details. So does anybody know when Earth Day started?
1970.
Yeah, 1970. It was proposed by Senator Nelson, not our Senator Nelson, but Senator Nelson from Wisconsin way back then. And I can't say Wisconsin without going, Wisconsin. That's just for Joe. Wisconsin. So it was started because there was some things that were starting to happen in the world. Does anybody know what are some of those things? Pollution. That was a huge thing. Littering.
Air pollution.
Yep, air pollution. Because I don't know, you probably don't all remember this, but back then, the cars were huge. And I had one of these huge cars, and they weren't always real great, and so they caused a lot of the air pollution, right? So that was one thing that started. And then when we talk about littering, there's a lot of information about that too, about how people weren't paying attention, because it wasn't ever anything we had to pay attention to before. There's a certain thing that happens when technology changes faster than what legislation can do. This is really weird just to be talking to them. I'm not getting as much feedback as I do from the adults.
You're doing good, Amy.
Thank you. Yay. Elin. So they don't understand what I'm saying about technology. So sometimes technology changes, like the cars change and we have all these cars, but we don't realize what's happening, like that they're polluting the air until after that happens. And then, because people don't always do what's right without somebody telling them to, there is legislation that needs to happen, but we all know how long those laws and regulations and everything can take to make their way through. Does that make more sense? Yes, but people have been telling them. I know. And so there's a couple things that are happening out in the world. Remember, like, a long time ago when I talked about how you all can't vote, but your voices are really what needs to be heard? No, you don't remember that. Maybe you weren't here. Okay. See, no rhetorical questions for children. So it is your voice. And so the reason why Earth Day is April 22nd is a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons is because they really wanted to get the college kids involved. And so it was between spring break and finals. Seriously, look it up. So, because then college kids had time to go out and march. And that first year, it was like 10% of the population participated in Earth Day. And so what I need you all to do is to continue this trend and be resistant to things that people are telling you not to worry about. Because honestly, it's going to be the kids who make the difference. Elin?
Why just college students and not...
Well, it was just focused on them. They wanted to make it easier for them to participate. So it wasn't like they wanted it only for college students. Aria?
That's why winter sometimes is
Oh, so Aria was saying sometimes we get more pollution in the winter because you can't bike or rollerblade, and there's all this stuff with the way the earth works and the everything like that. So, last thing, Elin. Okay. So what we're going to do today is part of caring for the earth is caring for the place we live. So we're going to go and we're going to talk a little bit about things we can do to care for the place, because the big thing is that things need to start locally. So if we start here, then it can spread out. And can we do everything all at once? No. And can it seem super overwhelming? Yes. And it can be scary at times too, but we're all here to work together. And I have a lot of faith knowing that it's all of you kids who are going to be coming up and working on it in the future. So I think the kids are actually going to sing us out today, right, Joe? Yes. So we'll let them do that.
May peace surround us. May love surround us as we go. As we go.
Back in the mid-1970s, when we had a more just health insurance, I worked on the hematology oncology unit at the University of Iowa Hospital and Clinics with patients of cancer and blood disorders. They were allowed to stay for months of treatment, and I was privileged to hear and know their personal stories. More often than not, at their near time of death, many would make statements like, "I wish I would have, could have, should have" sentiments. As I reflect on that experience, my thoughts were brought to Greg Boyle's book, Tattoos on the Heart excerpt, where Thich Nhat Hanh writes that our true home is the present moment. To live passionately with that miraculous one continuous breath when we first entered into this world. The miracle is to walk on the green earth in the present moment. Desert fathers, when they were disconsolate and without hope, would repeat one word over and over as a kind of soothing mantra. The word wasn't Jesus, God, or love. The word was today. It kept them where they needed to be, and I think as well. When we think about getting away from all the busyness of life, where do we decide to go? The cruises on our magnificent, boundless oceans, picking exquisite shells and colored glass, and on the amazing, pristine beaches, hiking the breathtaking mountains, exploring, listening, and smelling, feeling the gentle breezes in the forests, and picnicking, strolling through the stunning parks. This is what air is supposed to smell like. And right in our backyards, ponds of water filled with indigenous shrubs and vegetation, embellished with fluent dragonflies, industrious bumblebees, astounding butterflies, incredible hummingbirds. How are we daily taking care of our treasured earth? And in our precious present moment today, unpredictable about its constancy and longevity, did we thank the water when we turned on the tap this morning for tea or coffee, washing the dishes or clothes, showering, rinsing your mouth? Were we present to our breath after waking up, grateful to the many sources of nature that gives us that gift? Are we talking to the bonny houseplants, plethora of spunky herbage, heavenly flowers, blissful radiant sun, gentle greenery, blanketing the earth? Are we kissing them with sweet indebtedness? Mother Nature is a heart of gold, affectionate in sharing her benevolent, magnanimous abundance, expecting nothing in return except for us to relish and care for her compassionate miracle. As lawyer Robert Sook would say, think about it.
In gratitude, we'll receive the offering. I invite you to take a deep breath. Breathe deep the breath of life. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning. Above you the sky, and beyond that the stars shining with their ancient light, holding you in this moment, this breath, today. You yourself made of earth and stars. Know that in this house you are named and known as beloved, as sacred. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God and Gaia of many names and beyond all naming. Here between starshine and earth, held by centuries of rock and story, let us breathe our history, its blessings, its mistakes, the mix of the very air we breathe, holding what we have done or left undone in beauty, in brokenness, Help us start the day that way, or end it, or pause somewhere in the middle, to remember that we are always in the middle, and always at the brink of something, always made up of what has been and helping to bring about what is yet to be. Perhaps if we can imagine ourselves as a tree, or even simpler, a quiet, persistent fern or a shrub, sometimes feeling more like a weed than anything, but always, with the seasons of our years and our lives and our days, finding a way to be nourished by the very soil we are in, with strength and ancient memory, helping us find a way to stretch into the air, to breathe, and to give breath. Hold in our hearts this day all those who suffer in mind, body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names you're holding in your own heart this day in joy or sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. All the names spoken, unspoken, may we all be held in love. These words of meditation are from G. Snyder, who writes, "The rising hills, the slopes of statistics lie before us, the steep climb of everything going up as we go down. In the next century or the one beyond that, they say, are valleys and pastures, and we can meet there in peace if we can make it. But to climb these coming crests, one word to you and your children. Stay together. Learn the flowers. Go light. May it be so. Amen." The hymn is Spirit of Life in the gray hymnal. I invite you to remain seated as we sing.
The first reading is The Tree Agreement by Elise Pastian. The neighbor calls the Siberian elm a weed tree, demands we hack it down, says the leaves overwhelm his property, the square backyard. He's collar and tie. A weed tree? Branches screen buildings, subway tracks, his patch of yard. We disagree. Claim back the sap, heartwood, wild bark. He declares the tree hazardous. We shelter under leaf hoard, crossway for squirrels, branch house for sparrows, jays. The balcony soaks up the shade. Chatter song drowns out cars below. Sun branches down, leaves overwhelm. The tree will stay. We tell him no. Root deep through pavement, elm. The second reading is the significance of location by Patty Ann Rogers. The cat has the chance to make the sunlight beautiful, to stop it and turn it immediately into black fur and motion, to take it as shifting branch and brown feather into the back of the brain forever. The cardinal has flown the sun in red through the oak tree to the lawn. The finch has caught it in yellow and taken it among the thorns. By the spider, it has been bound tightly and tied in an 8-string knot. The sun has been intercepted in its one basic state and changed to a million varieties of green, stick, and tassel. It has been broken into pieces by glass rings, by mist over the river. Its heat has been given the board fence for body, the desert rock for fact. On winter hills, it has been laid down in white like a martyr. This afternoon, we could spread gold scarves clear across the field and say in truth, "Sun, you are silk." Imagine the sun totally isolated, its brightness in continuous streaks straight out into the black, never arrested, never once being made light. Someone should take note of how the earth has saved the sun from oblivion.
It was August 1987. The piano was destroyed by heat, it said. Not this one here, but its predecessor apparently was. While the details of it took a little tracking down, some of which some of you may know or maybe were here, in 1987, without air conditioning during summer heat waves and the congregation often not meeting in the summer, the sanctuary temperature fluctuated so much that, as one of our histories just plainly said, the piano was destroyed by heat. More specific description was found in a letter from our tuner for many years. He said, referring to the piano and harpsichord that were in the space, he said, "The physical condition of both instruments, in all caps, is shocking," and goes for the whole letter about it, hearing about how the church candles melted during that summer in the sanctuary, and the wood of the chairs were too hot to touch. And then he included this line. This was a fun letter to read. He said, well, not fun, kind of sad, but dramatic. He said, "Due to the violent climactic conditions both instruments were inadvertently subjected to, they are both basically worthless. It's difficult to decide which instrument was hurt worse because they are both, in all caps, so bad. I suggest that you demand a new piano." And so we did, and here it is. Destroyed by heat. That's probably the closest thing to a description of hell in any of our written histories here. So apparently in the sanctuary in August of 1987 was the day the music died. That's what extremes can do. Warp, crack, break things in a way that leaves them bent out of shape, maybe so bad that they're busted beyond repair, where there is too much tension or too much pressure. It's a simple learning that all of us likely know in a lot of different ways, like other instruments, like cellos or anything with a string, a guitar, a violin. The tension of the string is very important to be in tune for pitch and sound, and those little tuning keys that pull or loosen that string are delicate, sometimes very precarious things. Like that same piano tuner who came to my house and said, trying to tune our over 100-year-old family piano, "It's like trying to tune a hand grenade," he said. Who knew that pianos had such a violent history, or that piano tuners had such fun language? So we know this in so many ways, how the tension, the pull, the give and take of a string or a wire or bread dough or engines or bandwidth or community, many aspects of our monthly theme of resistance, are not that different from the soul, where too much pressure can crack it, or like the earth, not enough strength sometimes too, that it will just lie flat and depleted. In most things, and in our spiritual tradition, extremes tend to cause problems. There is a tension that shows up in our tradition too, this balance, this back and forth between solitude and society, between escaping and engaging. We love, as a tradition, Walden Pond, for good reason. We even named the road out front here Walden Lane when we built our church here in the mid-60s, because of the influence of transcendentalism and many transcendentalists, including Henry David Thoreau, who gets a bad rap for going to the woods but still having his mom do his laundry. But to give Henry a fair assessment, he was always on the margins of society, refusing to pay taxes because it supported slavery, being curious and clumsy in ways that weren't always socially acceptable when he accidentally burned down many acres of the forest around Concord. For a lover of nature, that was a little devastating to him. But he also purposely went to the wooded area of Walden Pond because it was public, not private. It was at the intersection of pathways. It was right next to the railroad in what Derek Robertson on our staff describes on our UU pilgrimages to Walden. Henry David Thoreau was engaging performance art in the woods. He set up camp in a location and in a way that was to protest against excess, against capitalism, against militarism. He set up camp in a location that was very clear where he was and what he was doing, and a reminder that we interact and should much more deeply with the natural world than we do. To remember that we are made out of the same stuff as the dirt that is holding us up. A weed tree? Asked the poet in a neighborly disagreement. Branches screen buildings, they write. We disagree, claim back the sap. They declare the tree hazardous, but we shelter under leaf. branch house for sparrows and jays. The balcony soaks up the shade. Chatter song drowns out the cars below. Sun branches down, leaves overwhelm. Root deep through pavement, elm. Root deep through pavement. There's a reminder there that as much as it is good and right to hold the value of nature and the expanse of wilderness as sacred in and of itself, it's equally important to remember that how we interact with the earth and the natural world, our interdependence with it, is in every square inch everywhere, not just out in a secluded woods. Or, as I read not long ago, a phrase that seems so simple and kind of obvious, but holding an important reminder and truth, that the grass is greener where it's watered. Not here or there, but how it's nourished. From the food we eat to the materials we use to the air we breathe, nature is not out there. And perhaps the question is, how are we paying attention to our interconnections even and in the midst of city, paved as it may be, learning from the tree how to root deep through and in and amongst pavement? Ours is a tradition that is the lineage most of the time of affirming science as a source of wisdom, no less and sometimes more than Scripture, that both are simply ways to speak and teach about different things and in different ways about wisdom and wonder. One a little more factual, maybe one a little more poetic, both leading toward wisdom and wonder about humanity and the world and the truth of what it means to be alive. But we were quick to agree with Galileo that the sun does not, in fact, revolve around us. And there is something beautiful to remember, of course, that the only way we know of the sun, like the poet says, is in the ways that it enters into our tiny little corner of the galaxy and our own existence. The sun has been intercepted, they write, in its basic state, changed into a million varieties. It's been broken into pieces by glass rings or by mist over the river. Its heat has been given the board fence for body and the desert rock for fact. Imagine the sun totally isolated, they write. Its brightness, continuous streaks straight out into the black, never once being made into light. Ecological spirituality is to believe that the natural world is infused with beauty and we are part and parcel with it, even with its messy harshness and intensity at times, and where we are called to find some balance of how we might celebrate the interconnection of how our human daily lives and the earth interact. We come from the fire and the spirit and the water, all of it, the hymn reminds us. Sometimes it seems the entire earth turns around us, and maybe in some ways that are not self-centered, maybe it does. The only way we know the world is how it turns right around us, how we interact with it. And perhaps one good way to be present to it is to notice those interactions no matter where we are, the operative word being today. This ray of light, this small patch of green between the road and the sidewalk, this brave tree busting under the concrete to bloom forth in the midst of human structure. And perhaps that interaction, that noticing, even in downtown among all the buildings there, is to remember the very air we breathe, every single breath, no matter where we are, it's made out of the earth and star, and so are we. Maybe that awareness will help us want to take a little better care of each other, which is all natural living things, both for our own preservation, but for the very fact that it is life itself and it is sacred in and of itself. Why don't you stay in the wilderness? Asked mountaineer and eco-educator Willie Unselid. He said, because that isn't where it's at. He said it's back in the city, back in downtown St. Louis, back in Los Angeles. He wrote, the final test is whether you experience the sacred in nature and it enables you to cope and more effectively be with the problems of the world. If being with nature does not enable you to do these things better, and sometimes it doesn't, then by my scale of value, it has failed us. You go to nature for an experience of the sacred, he wrote, to reestablish your contact with the core of things, where it's really at, in order to enable you to come back to the world of people, to operate and be in community. Seek ye first the kingdom of nature, he wrote, that the kingdom of humanity might be realized. We're always living at the intersections of humanity in the natural world, of society and solitude, of pavement and preserved wilderness. Perhaps that intersection is always right in the center of our soul and right in the center of each moment. The hymn is for the beauty of the earth. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing two of the verses that are listed in your order of service. You, as you're comfortable, place a hand over your heart or toward the sky or earth in gratitude. Remember the blessings of earth and sky. May we learn from our natural kindred all around us. And as one poet sings, so I take my cue from the willow tree, for it don't break in just one storm, but bends with a strength that keeps it free. May it be so. Amen.